On this episode of the Fantasy Flyer, it is fantasy football playoff time. And as we get into the fantasy football playoffs, we have a lot of actual football playoff scenarios to talk about. This show, a little bit more fantasy football playoff and football playoff centered. It is going to cover all of the Week 15 preview, the important games. We'll have an express lane, give you 5 fantasy flyers, all on episode 29 of the Fantasy Flyer. It starts right now. Welcome. Episode 29, Fantasy Flyer. We're back at it as usual. The Friday show, the weekend show, the preview show, whatever you want to call it. I'm Derek. What does that say in your cup? Hop Devil?
It does. I realized as I picked it up, I should have turned it so it's free advertising.
Those on the podcast can't see that. He had the words Hop Devil on his cup. Taylor, how you doing?
Not too shabby. Getting ready for the holiday extravaganza and whatnot. Gonna do some traveling, and I don't know if we talked about last episode. I'll be having a couple.
You can keep going. It's okay.
There
It's
goes the headset.
more interesting when that happens.
Yeah, gonna have to come up with a name for the on the go dojo. That's not bad. On the go dojo.
Sounds more like a latrine that you carry around with you than anything else. Yeah. We got a bit of a slate. Oh, I didn't even write the games. It's okay. I'll write the games for host v host while you do the 9. We're starting off with the 9. Give the video a like, share it, do fun things for us. We appreciate it. Take it away with the 9. I got to write things down.
All right. Reminder, there are 3 Saturday games: Colts and Vikings, Ravens and Browns, Dolphins and Bills. Starting off with Arizona, Colt McCoy not on the injury report, so should be starting. Marquise Brown with an illness is on the injury report as questionable. He did return to limited practice on Friday, so that's trending in the right direction. Atlanta, reminder that Desmond Ridder will start since Mariota is on IR. The Ravens, Lamar Jackson is officially out with his knee injury. Tyler Huntley with his concussion was not on the injury report and has been cleared of the NFL's concussion protocol. Harbaugh didn't officially name a starter, or the wording was he declined to name a starter, but I don't see why it wouldn't be Huntley. Unless anything happens with his concussion, he regresses or what have you, he should be the starter. Carolina, Laviska Shenault, shoulder, DJ Moore, ankle are both questionable. Moore was downgraded to a limited participant Friday, and Coach Steve Wilkes said that he is a game time decision. No word really on Shenault, which way he's trending, but he seems to be taking over as the number 3. I would still say him and Shy are still kind of sharing that spot, but Shenault definitely taking a step towards taking over. It seems like he's been having a couple of big plays for the team. So Chicago, Justin Fields not on the injury report. Chase Claypool with a knee injury is out. N'Keal Harry back injury is questionable. Was a full participant Friday. Cincinnati, Hayden Hurst calf is out. T. Higgins, hamstring, Tyler Boyd, finger, both questionable, were full participants Friday. Cleveland, David Njoku, knee, Amari Cooper, hip, not on the injury report. David Bell, who's been playing sort of the slot number 3 receiver, apparently has a thumb and a toe injury, is listed as questionable, didn't practice all week and is not expected to play. Michael Woods, a fellow rookie, may step in a little bit, but Demetric Felton, who's been with the team for a year, sort of a hybrid wide receiver running back, should be the one that gets more reps. He filled in when Bell has been out in the past. Denver. The names we said as questionable last show are all out. Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton, Kendall Hilton are all out. So I don't even know if I want to play Dulcich or Judy with what is it, Ripien? Brett Ripien? Yeah, that's makes a worse team even worse. Green Bay, Romeo Dobbs, ankle not on the injury report. Aaron Jones, ankle is listed as questionable, was a limited participant Friday, but is expected to play. Houston, Damian Pierce, ankle, Brandon Cooks, calf, Nico Collins, foot, all out. I would imagine that Rex Burkhead is the main running back, and honestly, I did not write down, but I'm drawing a blank on who else they have.
Come on, man. We do this every time. Darren Ogunabowale.
Agumbawale, thank you. I mean, that's how insignificant he is. He'll
I mean,
probably be more of the
maybe he's
pass
significant
catcher.
now.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, I don't know that maybe Rex Burkhead, but I don't know that I want either of them. Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence with his toe listed as questionable, didn't practice Wednesday, was limited Thursday and Friday, but as I mentioned, not too concerned. He played through it last week. Kansas City, Mecole Hardman, abdomen, is on IR, practice all week, but Andy Reid said Friday that he's leaning towards not playing Hardman. Kadarius Toney hamstring, was a limited participant all week, is still listed as questionable. Las Vegas, Josh Jacobs, quad and hand, listed as questionable, limited participant all week, but expected to play. Darren Waller and Hunter Renfro are in that 21-day window to come off of IR, and they both practiced a bit this week. There's no definitive one way or the other, so I put this myself. I didn't find this anywhere. I put game time decision for those guys, but there really wasn't a word one way or the other. So I don't know if you're feeling lucky, if you want to keep an eye on it, see what they announce Saturday and Sunday morning. Maybe snag. I don't know. Waller is probably the one that I would want more. But yeah, we'll have to see how they do coming back. Los Angeles Rams. Reminder that John Wolford neck is out. I think that the way that Mayfield played, he's probably going to finish the season for the Rams as the starting QB. Miami, Jeff Wilson with his hip is listed as questionable. Didn't practice Wednesday, was limited Thursday. It didn't say anything about Friday. New England, Ramondre Stevenson, ankle questionable. Didn't practice Wednesday and Thursday. Was limited Friday. Jacoby Myers, concussion, Damian Harris, thigh, both questionable, limited participants all week. Devontae Parker with his concussion is out. New Orleans, Juwan Johnson, ankle, Adam Troutman, ankle, both questionable, limited participants all week. Dwayne Washington with an illness, questionable, didn't practice all week, which may mean that David Johnson or Eno Benjamin step in to fill his role. New York,
Disgusting.
yeah, right. New York Giants, Richie James, looks like he's cleared the concussion protocols, was not on the injury report, so he should be good to go. Daniel Bellinger with a rib injury, questionable, limited participant all week. The Jets, Mike White, unfortunately, is out. Robert Saleh has named Zach Wilson as the starter because White will not be ready to play for Sunday, and Flacco will be the backup. Corey Davis with his concussion is out. Philadelphia, Dallas Goedert, we mentioned this on the previous show, but it looks like he will likely be active, but there is still no definitive on this. So keep an eye on that, but it seems like he may be in there this weekend. Pittsburgh, Freiermuth and Najee Harris, not on the injury report. Pickett with his concussion is listed as doubtful, not likely to play this weekend. So it looks like they haven't actually made a decision on the starter, and they said they're going to make the decision on Saturday. So it could be Trubisky or Rudolph. We'll have to see what
Yeah,
that
keep your eye on
decision
that.
is. Yeah,
That's unfortunately very uncomfortable of a thing, but it's going to be a thing.
yeah. Seattle, who already played, unfortunately, Tyler Lockett suffered some sort of finger injury, is out and will have surgery and could be back week 17, which would be the last week for most people's playoffs, or fantasy playoffs, that is. Tampa Bay, Julio Jones, knee listed as questionable, will return to practice Friday in limited capacity. Tennessee Titans, Dontrell Hilliard, Treylon Burks, both out. Robert Woods, illness, and Ryan Tannehill, ankle, not on the injury report. Washington, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, not on the injury report. That is it.
Okay. Just checking last second news. I don't see anything that has happened in the last couple hours that needs updating. So that's good news. That's really good news. A lot of injuries. A lot of injuries as usual. We'll also start thinning that out as we get to the bottom of the pile when it comes to these teams.
All right.
For fantasy relevancy, unless it's really fantasy relevant. But really good 9. Keep an eye on a lot of those. We'll start seeing, for those that are questionable or those that aren't going to be active, you'll start to see call-ups probably in the next 12 hours. I may actually see some by the time I'm done with the show, editing it, putting it up later tonight, which should be about, well, I don't know if it'll go up tonight or if it'll go up tomorrow, but by midnight tonight, it'll probably start seeing a couple that pop through. What was I just gonna say? Because it was about picking up or people being called up. Oh, if they have room to be called up, because once you get called up a third time, you have to either stay there or get released.
Right. That's
So
a good thing to note.
keep an eye on that. So we're gonna go right from there into a healthy game of 4 downs. The 4 down segment. I'm going to read 4 statements to Taylor. He's going to rank them from least likely to most likely, or vice versa, however he sees fit. And he's going to return fire. So, do you want to go first this time? I think I went first last time.
Sure.
All right.
I did a sort
It's
of,
a theme.
yes, I did a playoff theme.
Okay.
And some of these I don't necessarily agree with the initial statement, but I think they're sort of walking the line, so I threw them on here to see what you thought. Panthers make the playoffs and the Bucks do not.
Okay.
Patriots make the playoffs and the Dolphins do not.
Okay. Oh boy, we
Yeah.
got some juicy ones starting
Yeah.
off.
Commanders make the playoffs and the Giants do not. And finally, the Seahawks, unfortunately, do not make the playoffs.
Just period. There's
Just
no.
period. Yeah, no alternative. I was trying to find a good one, but I almost thought about the Lions, but I didn't really see that happening for the Lions.
So the Seahawks play the Chiefs, Jets, and Rams.
Yes. Oh,
At the
yeah. Sorry, I have all the teams that they all play here. If you
Well,
want
I
them.
already, I mean, I basically, because I just looked up the Panthers too.
Okay.
And those are the only 2 that were really question marks, because I know the Patriots, after this game against the Raiders, they play playoff teams all the way in.
Yep.
So,
One of
and I
which
believe
is the
it's
Dolphins.
I believe, yeah, I was about to say, I think it's Chargers, one of them's Dolphins, and then
Bengals,
Bills.
Dolphins, Bills.
Bengals, Dolphins, Bills after tomorrow's game. Sunday's game, whatever game. Wait, Bengals, Dolphins, Bills? I thought they played.
That's what I have. I can double check.
Well, because Bill Belichick was saying staying out west, but did they play last week out west? Maybe that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, the Cardinals.
Then yes, okay, so ignore that. All right, so Bengals, Dolphins, Bills, and honestly, I think those are 3 losses for the Patriots. Sorry to say, bud. So that one's going to be my least likely.
Okay.
The Panthers have to play the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers play the Bengals this week. I am going to put that 3rd. The Panthers are still Dooku burgers. Just
That's terrible.
They are on a win streak, are they not? Not that it matters that much.
Let's calm down. All right. Yeah, they've won like 2 games in a row.
Yeah, they beat the Broncos and the Seahawks. Now they play.
Perfectly good game of football.
They might play Mason Rudolph.
And we say bye-bye.
What were the other 2 again?
Commanders make the playoffs, Giants don't, and Seahawks just flat out don't make the playoffs.
I'm gonna put. Oh, that one's right there with Panthers beating the Bucks because the Bucks are also atrocious. You got to remember the first time the Bucks and the Panthers played, the Buccaneers got steamrolled. I think they lost that game 22-3.
21-3, yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, the Seahawks are not. Yeah, I'm gonna put the Seahawks third. Actually, not making the playoffs. Panthers making the playoffs, and the Buccaneers not as second most likely, and most likely is the Commanders over the Giants. That's a softball. The Giants look like very bad over the last couple weeks. And now they play each other this week, which there's some interesting playoff scenarios that go with those. So yeah, that's my take on those 4. And I think strength of schedule the way out is the only basis for those, which is fair. But
Mhm.
the Seahawks are probably going to end up losing 2 in a row at least, which because the Chiefs are just a better team.
Yeah.
If the Jets have Mike White back, or if Zach Wilson actually plays decent enough to keep the job, that could be a 50-50 game on New Year's Day. So they could easily go 1-2 the rest of the way, and they ain't making the playoffs at that. So
Right.
I don't like that one at all, based on the schedule anyway. The Patriots, like I said, those 3 games are just they'll be happy to get a win out of those. I think that's going to be safe to say out of the after the Raiders. Like
Yeah.
the Raiders. This is trap game feelings for me when it comes to the Patriots and the Raiders. We'll talk about that because it is our host v host, one of our host v host games. Spoiler alert. And then I something about this Lions team. I just want to bring this up. Something about the Lions team says that they're going to make it, which deeply affects Seattle and the Giants and the Commanders.
Right.
So this tie is going to probably hurt. Can I help you two? Why are you biting him? There's 2 cats and they're fighting. Sorry, this is apparently interesting for a couple seconds. Is it because I said the word lions? Is that it? I don't know. Gotta control the animals. Anyway, the Commanders playing the Giants this week is a big game for the Commanders. I don't think it matters for the Giants because their schedule, I mean, let's check out the other 2 games that we have.
Yeah. The Giants after this play the Vikings, Colts, and Eagles. So they could.
They'll probably be lucky to have 2 wins out of these next 4 games.
Yeah.
So, including tomorrow's. So, yeah. My turn to read you things.
All right.
Once upon a time, on the night before Christmas. That's what we're going to name the 4 Downs next Friday. It's going to be the night before Christmas. 4 Downs. Oh, interesting. Wow, we just covered this. 3 of these. The theme of this 4 Downs is long shots.
Okay.
Okay. So, down number 1, Detroit makes the playoffs. I just explained to you things that need to happen. So, here we go. Down number 2, Desmond Ridder throws for 200 yards versus New Orleans. That's this week. Down number 3, Brett Ripien has 200 yards throwing, and Denver beats Arizona. Down number 4, Zach Wilson is a top 10 quarterback this week versus those Detroit Lions. Final Jeopardy starts now. That was very suspenseful. You literally.
Yeah.
The title of that button is increasing suspense, and you failed.
I'm gonna go.
He shut down. Here we go.
My headset did not restart. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna start with most likely.
This pause is brought to you by Arizona Iced Tea.
I'll go with
Arizona Iced Tea. We're better than our football team.
Ripien. No.
I gave you
So
a couple tough ones here.
yeah, you did. So Ripien, Ritter, and Detroit. Wilson for me is my number 4. The other 3 are very
Likely.
close.
Okay.
Least likely, yeah.
All right. I like that.
The problem I have with Ripien is he only has Judy and Dulcich as like solid options. Those
Mhm.
aren't his only options, but I'll go Ritter, throws for 200. Then Ripien for 200 and beating Arizona. Then Detroit making the playoffs, and then Wilson a top 10 QB versus Detroit this week.
I know those are completely like there's a lot of like Detroit as making the playoffs is completely separate than 1 week of football.
Right.
But I was like, oh, Detroit makes the playoffs. And I was like, wait a second. There's so many juicy quarterbacks who should not be starting, but unfortunately have to be. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't hate it. I can't. Detroit making the playoffs at number 3. Is that what you said?
Mhm.
Interesting. You don't think Detroit makes the playoffs?
Well, like I said, I looked at it as almost being like Seattle doesn't and Detroit does. They finish with the Jets, which, I mean, this week. So the Jets have a good D, as we know. Wilson's going to be the problem here, and Goff has been able to put up a decent amount of points. This is almost like this is not on the same level, but kind of comparable to what we just saw last night. 49ers good D playing Seahawks. Gino able to put up points, although
I
he
can see that.
wasn't last night.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see the correlation there.
Yeah. Then they play the Panthers, which they could easily win, but I could see that going either way. Then they play the Bears, same thing. I could see that going either way. Then they play the Packers. I'm leaning Packers, but again, that could go either way. So
Right.
to your point, the Lions have a very good chance at winning out, but they also, other than stepping up on their run defense, are not. They allow a ton of points, as we know.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they're 6 and 7 right now. They're second in the NFC North. Giants and Commanders, one of them will have 6 losses more than likely. I can't say that because they tied last time, but one of them will have 6 losses more than likely after tomorrow. If the Lions can win two of their last 3 after the Jets, and I think the Giants are going to, like we said, that they'll be lucky if they win 2 of their 4 left, including tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think that would put, and then you have the Seahawks who finish off, like we said, they finish off against the Chiefs. The Lions have a path here. That's what and it's not a narrow one, unfortunately. The Giants and the Seahawks finish off in rough shape just because of how the teams are playing, and in the Seahawks case, who they're playing. So,
no, and the Commanders themselves also don't have an easy finish, but I have them probably winning against the Giants and the Browns. They also play the 49ers and the Cowboys, which I have them losing, so they could go 2-2.
Do either of those 2 teams in Week 18?
Cowboys is week 18.
Washington will win that game.
Oh, you think Cowboys are going to sit people?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So with this is going to lead to our next part of the video, because now the 4 downs is done. Another good game of 4 downs. The next part that we are going to bring up is we're going to go through a couple playoff scenarios very quickly. I'm going to actually skip the Thursday night review for a second, and we'll go to the Week 15 playoff scenarios just for this week. Dallas is one of them. There are 4 teams that can clinch this week in some fashion. Buffalo can clinch a playoff berth with a win or a tie, and the Chargers loss or tie, and the Jets loss. Excuse me. Let's start that again because I put the words. I wrote this horribly. But the Bills can clinch with a win. or a tie and a Chargers loss, or a tie, a Jets loss, and a tie from the Chargers and the Patriots, which that won't happen because two teams haven't tied in the same week since like the War of 1812. Kansas City can clinch with a win or a Chargers loss, or if both tie. That would be for the division, not a playoff berth. Dallas can clinch a playoff berth with a win or a tie and anything other than a tie for the Giants and the Commanders game, which is worth noting because they tied the first game, or a Detroit loss or a Washington loss. So basically, if the Giants or lose, the Commanders lose, or Detroit loses, it doesn't even matter if Dallas wins, they're in. Minnesota clinches the division with a win or a tie or a Detroit loss or tie. So kind of confusing when you're reading it to some, like when you're saying it on video.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. So basically, if Minnesota, Dallas, Kansas City, or Buffalo win, they're in the playoffs. Minnesota and Kansas City would win the division. Dallas and Buffalo would win a playoff berth. That's the most likely scenario out of any of these. If Detroit loses or Washington loses, Minnesota, like Detroit losing, would clinch for Dallas and Minnesota.
Right.
So that would, and which is why it's so imperative that they're going to have to win, probably not win out, but I'd say their next two games.
Yeah.
That's about that. I mean, that's the nuts and bolts of the playoff picture. I like this view better because it's way worse. My computer's screwing up. So the last thing we'll do for this part, for part one, we're going to go over the Thursday night review because we saw, it's a nice segue right from playoff clinching into last night's Thursday night game, which was a playoff clinching game. So a division clinching game. So,
Yes.
the 49ers beat the Seahawks. For those of you who don't want to pay Jeff Bezos any more money, and you didn't watch it on Amazon Prime, that's good for you. I appreciate it. I will update you on the things that happened. Taylor Wilsfist. 49ers won 21-13. This game was like 21-6 for like 20 minutes of the game, 24 minutes of the game. It was not. I think the halftime score was 21-6.
14-3.
14, was it?
14-3 was halftime.
14-3. I was about to say that somebody scored in the third, and it was both of them actually, so that's okay. That's right. The 49ers scored in their first drive out of the halftime and then didn't score again. And then the Seahawks didn't score a touchdown until the middle of the fourth quarter. So, couple notes from this one. Brock Purdy seems real. Like he has a lot of tools around him. But he's not bad. There's no bad here. 17 for 26, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, taking care of the ball. I mean, right in that 60 to 70% completion percentage. Don't hate it. You know, you can't really complain too much about that, especially for someone who was just a 7th round pick.
Yeah. Literally the last pick.
Yeah. He's doing what he needs to do. My question is, what's going to happen come playoff time? We know Jimmy G will be healthy at some point near the beginning of the playoffs. Get plus or minus a week. Brock Purdy, you know, playoffs and pressure aren't generally very kind to rookies. How does the coaching staff go about that? It's I think a much smarter coaching staff seeing this, knowing not to go out and get Baker, what they've seen in Purdy. Yeah, play him. Like, we got a good shot here. And them being miles right. This team looks really good. And if he can get better over the offseason, I don't see going into next year how he's not in contention for the starting job.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but he looks really, really good. He reads a lot of defensive schemes. He can read the field. He's perfect. He's really good at picking up zones. When he can pick up, he hit George Kittle on a 50-some yard bomb. That was just, he saw the zone. He knew where Kittle was, and he waited until Kittle had a cornfield to throw it to him. There's nobody around George Kittle. Also, spoiler alert, if you listen to us on Wednesday show, you should have played George Kittle.
Yeah.
4 for 5 was George Kittle, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns. So Seattle still not good against tight ends. Christian McCaffrey, 26 carries, 108 yards, touchdown on the ground, had 6 catches for 30 yards, most of that in the first half. Jordan Mason had like 4 carries, but those game stealing one was like 50 some yards.
Yeah, 55.
Yeah, so he's still around. The Ty Davis Price experiment is over. I I guess Elijah Mitchell we will come back and see. He continues to hurt his knee the same way over and over again, which is bad for him because he's a good running back. For Seattle, the story here is they are not getting it done.
No.
And we saw the Giants for the first 7, 8 games of the year find ways to get it done on like all but one game. Just whatever. It may not have looked pretty, but it was done. And there's no sense of that with the Seahawks team. Geno is declining, I would say. He's not necessarily missing passes, but the offense isn't moving as well.
Right.
His depth of pass has dropped like 3 yards per pass in the last like 3 weeks. To make it worse, then in the fourth quarter, Tyler Lockett breaks a finger and is probably out for the next 2 games, roughly.
Yeah.
I guess he will go in for surgery the early part of next week and may make a return somewhere around week 17, week 18. I would imagine if they're out of it by week 17, he probably doesn't play.
Yeah.
Just because he's not young. He's 29. So Ken Walker did pretty well versus defense. I mean, he's missing the red zone offense, but 12 carries, 47 yards, had 4 catches for 32 yards. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
could be worse. 12 points out of him is pretty. I mean, compared to some of his other games, obviously it's not his ceiling. It's really not even his average. But again, it's the number 1 run defense. So Lockett was 7 catches on 9 targets, 68 yards. Metcalf 7 catches on 9 targets, 55 yards. Noah Fant had the touchdown, 5 catches on 6 targets, 32 yards and a touchdown. Geno Smith 31 for 44, 238 yards and that 1 touchdown. Offense just got clogged up. Really isn't much else to say about it. Even with Brock Purdy, this is the one thing we said when Purdy came in, doesn't change the defense.
Right.
Defense still is the strength to this team. So I don't know. There's nothing really else from this game. Like I said, 49ers clinched the NFC West with this one. So they will be one of the top 4 teams in the NFC. Probably going to end up playing some team like the Giants or Lions or something. And
Yeah. As far as like this game and the fact that Seattle was basically out of it until the fourth quarter, there was a couple things that could have put them in this game. Travis Homer's fumble being one thing that changed the tide pretty decently. And then Purdy almost had an interception that it should have been an interception. The Diggs, I think it was, just bobbled it, but it was like right to him. So one of the only bad things I won't say only, but like Purdy, to your point, was pretty good. So that was one of the bad things that we saw from him, but there wasn't a lot. He got lucky. But yeah, if Seattle gets that interception, if they don't have that fumble, this could have been a lot closer. Granted, San Francisco's defense in those scenarios probably would have stepped up and held them to a field goal one of the times or something. But that fumble definitely helped San Francisco to get to really take over and get that extra spread on the game. So Seattle's they're slipping here. They've lost 2 in a row, but
I want to say 3 of their last 4.
yeah, no, you're right. 3 of their last 4, 2 in a row. The only team, so they lost actually 4 of their last 5. They lost to the Bucks, the Raiders, they beat the Rams, they lost to the Panthers, and now the 49ers. So they're slipping a little, but I think that they are still a capable team if they can right the ship. But like we said, they do have a tough schedule ahead. It's going to be tough to right this ship.
Yeah, this was kind of a crucial. I mean, it was a crucial loss for multiple reasons, but not because this would have kept them from falling anywhere, or it would have kept San Francisco from winning the division, but it would have kept them more solidly in the playoff picture.
Right.
Couple other side notes from this. San Francisco sent Nick Bosa at Geno Smith like 7,000 times, and there was nothing. I mean, he created hell for Geno. So the fact that Geno was 31 for 44 is he had to move a bit to do it, but that's pretty impressive. The other thing that you brought up, the fumble
hmm
and the interception, those are related in terms of game script. Quandre Diggs makes that interception, which is roughly midfield. The worst case scenario is they end up, I mean, when they got the ball back, they ended up fumbling on Seattle's side of the field.
Right.
All of a sudden, the fumble gets brought back to the 6-yard line, leads to a touchdown. That interception happens. It's not that punt. You're getting the ball back closer to midfield
Yeah.
instead of it being, at your 10-yard line, taking the defense. You might actually be able to hold them to a field goal at that point. It's one small thing that could have changed the game. So, I agree with everything you said as far as them slipping. 4 out of 5, I did not realize, and they lost to the Raiders. Is that what you said?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that was they had a lot of scoring in that game.
Yeah,
Wasn't it?
40 to 34.
Yeah, that was the game. Josh Jacobs sealed it with like a 70-some yard run
Yeah,
out of nowhere.
something like that.
Yeah, they let Josh Jacobs run all over him. Yeah, if I want to say that it doesn't start with the defense in some places, but then other times it doesn't start with the offense,
hmm
or it does start with the offense. Missing Ken Walker for a couple weeks wasn't good.
Right.
You needed him for those weeks. That's what you can't go back and change it, but that's something that would have helped.
Yeah,
You're not going to have Lockett for at least
exactly.
week 16. If it ends up being week 17, I mean, week 16 is a big one next week because you play the Chiefs. Like, you need every single weapon that you can, and now not that you can't depend on Marquise Goodwin, but he's not Tyler Lockett.
Right.
And I also believe, similar to Jerry Jeudy, Lockett has a very good record against the Chiefs. So could be mistaken that for somebody else, but I'm pretty sure he had a good record. So, all right, we're gonna take our first break here. When we come back, we will start with the Week 15 preview. Got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games we'll go in depth on, and then we actually have an express lane because not all of these games matter. They matter. They're all getting paid. It's football you can watch, but from a fantasy point of view, we'll go from that. But football, they're not really entertaining. Most of these are third, fourth place teams, first place teams that are so far ahead it's not even worth talking about. So we'll explain when you get there. Taylor, do me a favor. Sign us off, please.
We'll see y'all on the flip.
It's Derek. We're back. This is Taylor. He's laughing at me. I'm gonna start doing we're gonna do a Christmas song when I do that. I don't know. Just having fun with it. Part 2 of Fantasy Flyer, episode 29. We're gonna go right into the Week 15 preview. We'll go over some of the more important games. Starting off with game 1 for us here: Ravens at the Browns. Ravens are 9-4. Browns are 5-8. Ravens tied for first in the division. Browns third in the AFC North. Cleveland is actually 2.5-point favorites, over under at 38.5. Like every game, the Ravens, it's important. You can't fold because Cincinnati is hot. And much so to the point, you let Cincinnati take the lead. You're still probably solidly in the AFC, but you're 9-4. There's a couple of really good 7-6 teams that are battling it out, like the Chargers are playing the Titans this week. Jets are 7-6. So there's a couple important games on the future schedule for the Ravens. Huntley, I put Huntley will start, but like you said, it's been kind of detracted from, we don't know if he's starting. I imagine he will start. I don't know why you wouldn't. You can't, like I just said, you can't really afford to lose games. So you need every kind of, until Lamar Jackson gets back, likely next week, you will need every little bit of help that you can get. Because it's just a big deal for them to hold on, obviously. Browns are not the toughest. Cleveland is trying to fix themselves. They got used to Jacoby Brissett. Deshaun Watson came in, and Deshaun Watson has not been like amazing in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
But again, he's just kind of fixing it. It's not really Deshaun Watson's fault that the team is struggling. I think it's just the situation around
I'm
him.
sexy and I know
There
it.
we go. That's from Deshaun Watson. Uh, Big thing for me, I like this game for Mark Andrews. We talked on Wednesday, and I'm looking at some things. I'm like, Browns. They are first off, they are statistically the like 30th first running backs. So J.K. Dobbins should be good to go this week. Tyler Huntley should be good to go. The Ravens are a little more tougher against the run, so that gives me some pause of concern for Nick Chubb. Again, he's like slowly been flying under the radar down the running back rankings.
Yeah.
He was the RB1 after week 6. He's like RB6 now. I don't think he's that far. I think he's RB4, but still. But the key here is Mark Andrews, which been much more openly known that he's been sliding.
Mhm.
The pass game for Baltimore has been very bad recently. But this just seems like a good matchup for him. The Cleveland Browns don't exactly stop teams consistently. Big weapons have good games against the Browns. What do you think about Mark Andrews coming into this week?
Yeah, he obviously he's a great talent, great tight end. He can't they can't keep him down forever. Obviously, Huntley is a different situation than Jackson, but that being said, when Huntley took over for Jackson in the past, Andrews was still fine. So I'm throwing out the couple of bad games here.
7 bad games to be
Is
exact.
it really that many? I mean,
Since week 6. He hasn't had more than 65 yards or a touchdown, which doesn't necessarily
yeah.
make it a bad game given how thin the tight end position
Right,
is.
I
But
guess right. In relative terms to the tight end, he's still like pretty decent. I mean,
yeah,
granted he had like an almost goose egg in week 7, and then although that might have been he might have gotten hurt that week, but regardless, he's been 6 or more points, averaging close to 10 most of the time except for last week. So yeah, I think he bounces back. The only thing I will say is I have that Cleveland is ranked 5th against tight ends, but I don't think that when you have a tight end like Andrews or Kelsey that is also the number 1 option for receiving on the team, those rankings, I won't say I cast them aside, but I adjust them accordingly,
right. It makes sense. Makes sense to do that. Let's see. What big name tight ends have they faced this year? They haven't faced any of those guys. So, Travis Kelsey.
Fryermuth week
No,
3.
that's the Bengals who played him. Pat Fryermuth with Mitchell Trubisky. I'll throw that game away.
Oh, here
Uh,
we go. They actually already played the Ravens.
that was week 7 when he got hurt.
Yeah. Well, how about that? Never mind then.
Or was that week 8? Hold on. You may be onto something.
No, it
No,
was
that
week
was the
7.
game he got. That was the game he got hurt. That was the goose egg game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to kind of throw that one away. And the Ravens only won by 3 in that one. Point taken to that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of Rashad. Well, of course, they also had Rashad Bateman. So there could be a lot of different things. Also, the decline of Isaiah Likely is now pointed out as well because where's he gone? But yeah, they haven't played like a George Kittle. They haven't played a tight end dominant offense really. If you take that injury and put it into the fray, it's a different story. So they should. It's interesting. It's an interesting layer. I
Yeah.
like him this week as long as he stays healthy. If he gets hurt, obviously you can't play. For the Browns, obviously we talked about Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper. I mean, Watson and Cooper are trying to still fully be on the same page. they're not on the same page. They're just not totally mind readable like Cooper was kind of with Dak for a little while there in Dallas. It'll come in time, especially as Watson gets more into the what's the word I'm saying? The playbook.
The
Watson,
playbook, yeah. On
knows
the bright side, Amari Cooper, his like home versus away game numbers are like huge in terms of not
Yeah.
playing well when they're away. But
he's
to
great
your,
at home.
yeah, to your point, I don't know how much that does if Watson is still trying to build a connection with him.
I can see this being a good first game for Watson where he steps up. We know the Ravens aren't good versus wide receivers, and that brings me to my next point. Donovan Peoples-Jones. If there's somebody who's number 2 out of a number 2 in the league, it seems to be him over the last, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
He's had a great stretch.
Yeah, he's been very good. So trust him. I'm starting Andrews. I'm starting DPJ. I don't really have a sit here. I would be wary of Kareem Hunt, probably on a
Mhm.
higher level than Nick Chubb, because again, Nick's at home, which it's a little different for him as well when he plays at home. There isn't really a great sit option here. You don't sit Dobbins in this one. I'm seeing a lot of yards going to the running backs, either Dobbins or Kenyon Drake and Tyler Huntley as well. It all comes down to how the offenses battle each other. The over under is only 38.5, which kind of makes me wonder if either there's weather, which is totally plausible. I'm in New York. You're in Jersey. I've been getting snow all day. They actually canceled half of my day of work, which doesn't ever happen. So I don't know if that's a thing there in Cleveland, but interesting game. Ravens can't lose. Browns doesn't really matter because I think they're going to be kicked out of the playoffs either way. But next game, Dolphins 8-5, wild card position currently. Wild card number 5, 6, 6. They're currently 6th in the AFC standings. Bills 10-3. They're first in the AFC East. Buffalo 7-point favorites at home, over under 43.5. This could be a little bit of snow on the ground for this game, but I don't think maybe that might have changed because it seems like the over-under is a little. Well, no, I guess it is a little low for these two teams. 43.5. You'd probably see this up closer to 50, I'd imagine. But battle of two QBs. Josh Allen hasn't been throwing for 350 and 3. Tua has had back-to-back weeks where he's kind of been, you know. Usually there's some big play capability from Tyreek Hill. The offensive explosion from Buffalo, whether it come from Gabriel Davis, whether it come from Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen rattling off a 30-yard run, any one of those things, just big play capability versus casual offensive explosion. We want to reference the first game where none of that happened, and it was the 21-19 Miami win that was more defensive based than anything else. It's going to be interesting to see Hill and Diggs on the same. I'm literally at some point in this going to say Dill and Higgs. I just want to let you know that. Hill and Diggs on the same field. That's an interesting matchup to me, just in terms of them going off. Buffalo's defense has been more steady this year. They're number 3 in the league in points allowed and an opponent rush yards. Miami doesn't rush the ball, so throw it, throw it, and throw it. And don't just throw it to Tyreek Hill. Like Jalen Waddle has had back-to-back games that have just been stinkers. So let's fix that. What's your opinion on this game? I do like Buffalo. I don't know about 7 points.
Yeah, that does feel like a lot. Granted, it's at home for Buffalo, and the Dolphins have been struggling a tiny bit. The Dolphins need to get Waddle involved. That has been, in my opinion, a huge part of. It's tough to say. Like if Tua is struggling, then what are you going to do? But not having Waddle involved, like only throwing to Tyreek, everybody's going to cover that. I mean, granted, Tyreek can get around it, but he can't get around all of it. So I don't know what they're doing with Waddle here. They got to get him more involved. They got to open it up. they were comparable to Chase and Higgins, like a solid 1A, 1B that it's just not there anymore. And I don't know why. They have an okay running situation, but we talked about Wilson being hurt. So Mostert should be okay, but I wouldn't like go crazy on him. I mean,
He's my set.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't know that I necessarily play him, but what I'm getting at is like the offense is not one dimensional. They're still gonna run the ball with Mostert. He's still gonna do something. It's just not gonna be amazing.
Assuming Jeff Wilson's out, of course.
Yeah, right.
Wilson isn't high on my list. Neither one are really high on my
Yeah,
list.
but yeah, like they don't have a one-dimensional offense, which is good. But they need to get Waddle more involved, and they don't throw to Gesicki, which is funky, but it is what it is. And yeah, they just need to open up their passing offense, especially against a good Buffalo team, although one that their defense has been trending in the wrong direction.
Buffalo's defense has been solid for the most part, even in games where they're not doing great, like when they beat the Jets 20-12.
Yeah.
And they allowed one touchdown to somebody who's throwing 50 times, so it can't be too bad.
No, that's they were a phenomenal defense that is now, I don't know. It's not.
Very good.
Yeah, right.
It's fallen from the 99th percentile to the 95th.
Exactly, yeah. Or maybe the 90th, yeah.
Yeah. If I start Gabriel Davis, obviously you start Stephon Diggs. Also, Dawson Knox sneaky here.
Mhm.
Miami's 30th versus tight end fantasy points wise. They give up, actually, I think it's 29th now, but still, sneaky play there. Sit Mostert, sit Wilson for me. I don't like this Miami run game. They had 2 really good weeks and only took advantage of one of them, which is kind of, they didn't even really take advantage of the one. So it was touchdown dependent. Against the Chargers, they didn't do really anything. So I like the Bills in this one. This again, win a game, clinch a playoff berth. And to their point, you win a game here. Miami's lost 2 in a row. They fall into the clutches of maybe not making the playoffs, which is a huge step towards AFC conference title game for the Bills
Mhm.
and the Chiefs, really. But those 2 teams are probably going to make it. I don't see how they wouldn't at this point. So, next game, Cowboys 10-3, currently in the first wild card position, the 5th spot in the NFC. They are in Jacksonville to take on the 5-8 Jaguars, which are second in the AFC South. Dallas 4-point favorites over under 48. Dallas locks in a playoff spot with a win. Jacksonville, I mean, we'll talk about the Titans and the Chargers, but the whole new layer to Jacksonville is they're kind of rejuvenated. They still have something to fight for here. A win here against the Dallas team that almost lost to the 1-11-1 Texans last week. You don't want to look too far ahead if you're Dallas, because next week is our huge Cowboys-Eagles game where they inevitably go in there sounding a lot better than they'll actually play and lose by 30. That's fine. Like the real end goal for Cowboys fans, they have to realize make the playoffs and then just stop watching because it's over. They don't play well in the playoffs. They haven't for 2 decades. So, anyways, back to this Sunday. Jacksonville has allowed some scoring on some parts of the year, and Dallas has been the number 1 team in scoring since week 7 when Dak came back. It's just 37.5 points per game. They're offensive juggernauts for the most part. Jacksonville, like I said, a lot on the line. Tennessee has the tough matchup. AFC South. Those 2 games between Sunday. By the end of Sunday, the AFC South will probably take a shape of some sort.
Mhm.
Tennessee does not look good in a lot of ways. Jacksonville can, and they're protecting their quarterback a little bit more. Their offensive line's been better. Jacksonville's only allowed 23 sacks this year for 146 yards. Dallas leads the league with only allowing 16 sacks this year, which is a very important thing for pass rushes. So it's going to be 2 offensive lines that are pretty good against a defensive line that's rather average from Jacksonville and the league leader in QB pressures that is Dallas, and they need to return to that. Lawrence, over his last 5 games, has not thrown an interception, but has thrown 10 touchdowns. He's 10-0 in those 5 games. That's number one pick worthy. He has the tools around him. That's kind of the way it should have been, but we'll let him. He's still like 23 or 24, so whatever.
Yeah.
My focus for this game, I want to see a return from Travis Etienne. His last 4 games, he's combined for 144 rush yards. Dallas has given up rush yards. They gave up 78 to Pierce in the touchdown. They gave up 82 to Jonathan Taylor in 3 quarters, basically. They leak rush yards. The other thing that compared to the other 2 is Etienne's more involved in the pass game than those 2.
Right.
Important to note. Jacksonville ranks 7th in takeaways with 1.5 per game. Turnover margin is 6th in the league. Dallas's turnover margin is 3rd in the league, and they're 2nd in the takeaways with 1.8. These 2 defenses can actually do something at times. More Dallas, obviously, than Jacksonville, like I just noted. But if Dallas can keep the offense on the field and their defense steps up, it's going to be Dallas. If they don't, it's going to be close, if not a loss. And that doesn't mean they're out. They can still clinch a playoff spot, which is what's crazy. But they're also 31st in penalty yards, Dallas is. So Dallas has more to lose, but they also don't.
Yeah.
That makes any sense. Like going into, worst case scenario, if you're planning as a Cowboys fan, like I am, you lose this game, you lose the Eagles, then you play the Commanders, and I mean, you can win that game. You're going to have to week 18. There's one more game on January 1st, I think. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. But you have to basically win.
Titans.
Who?
Titans
Titans. Well,
on the 29th.
that could be great news. That's going to be real interesting for the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Start Tony Pollard. He's actually my start of the week for this. I brought him up in our ranking show on Wednesday. He's been my RB5 because he's so involved, and his workload, it's not 80% of carries. It's not 80% of snaps. It's not even 60% of carries, but he sees enough snaps that he's doing something with them to the point where his fantasy output and an RB class that has been, I don't want to say historically underperforming, but it's been a little bit of a flat balloon. You've seen some folks do really well. Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, looking at you. And then others that just, I don't know where they, I don't know where they ran off to. Some of them were injured, which is another fair play. So, my sit is Christian Kirk. I feel Trayvon Diggs is going to have something to do with that. The important part to note here is Christian Kirk is more like he's starting to fade back into who's really the one, Zay Jones or Christian Kirk. Zay Jones has out-targeted him the last 3 weeks, at least the last 2, maybe the third. I might be misremembering. But Christian Kirk has not been as efficient on those targets either. So I like Zay Jones more than Christian Kirk. I imagine Christian Kirk will have Trayvon Diggs, who, despite getting burned by Ashton Doolin 2 weeks ago, should still be pretty good. So anything else from this one for you? I want to take Dallas, but again, this has massive trap game feel to it.
Yeah, I would also go Dallas. Yeah, I mean the point about Zay Jones and Kirk, yeah, Zay has definitely had a lot more target, not a lot more, but like in the realm of like 1 to 3 over the past 3 or 4 weeks, honestly. And the problem is like neither of these guys are a alpha number 1 wide receiver, but they are obviously good enough. I shouldn't say good enough. They're good. They're fine. They together give Lawrence good options, and they can get the team in a decent spot. But yeah, the Titans were actually one of the teams I almost put in my 4 downs. But it's just like what they're 7-6 and Jaguars are like 5-8.
2 games.
Yeah, so
And they don't play each other, which is what's
they do actually.
Oh, they do?
The last game of their season.
Oh wow, I thought because Tennessee played everybody in the first 7 weeks, I thought it was just everything else now.
Yeah, so and the Titans did lose to the Jags last week. So the Jags could get into range, but the problem is they're already 2 games back. The Jags play obviously this week, the Cowboys next week, the Jets, Texans is a decent option for them to win, and then they play the Titans. So unless the Titans really, really fall off, they also play the Texans, then it's going to be tough for the Jaguars to get in. Anyways, about this game specifically, yeah, Cowboys should win it in my opinion. Jags will probably do a decent job of keeping it close unless they do their weird every other week where they're not great.
That's a fair point. Next game, Lions, the surging Lions, 6-7, second in the FC North. In New York, take on the 7-6 Jets. 7-6, somehow fourth in the AFC East, starting to look a lot like the NFC East, and everybody's got a winning record. Detroit is a 1-point favorite in New York, over under at 43.5, and this is
Round one. Fight!
host v host game one. It's an interesting bout. It got slightly less interesting when Zach Wilson was named the starter. This was a PK game until Zach Wilson was named the starter. Now Detroit is a 1-point favorite. So I just want to break that news to everybody. Zach Wilson made the Jets' total points go down. Projected points, I should say. I mean, probably real points too, because he's just not that great. Uh, Lions, their streak has been impressive. We know that. It's been doing it without TJ Hawkinson, but for somehow this opens up the offense. I don't know how Jared Goff's been running it. I don't know. Agent Dan Campbell has been doing fantastic as far as, I mean, he doesn't make play. He's not the play caller there, but I guess the entire coaching staff in that sense has been doing really well. 5-1 in their last 6 games. One thing you said, the Jets is a different defense. Natural pressure. The one thing I've noted for the Jets for weeks now, natural pressure. They don't have to blitz to make you squirm in your toes. And Jared Goff has not been amazing under that pressure this year. So the other thing, and you brought this up a couple games ago, where you're talking about Nick Chubb at home versus, or not Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper at home versus away. Jared Goff on the road is not good. He's only thrown 2 touchdowns on the road this year, and he has twice that many interceptions on the road. So, not a stellar stat you want from your starting quarterback, but it doesn't really rule him out either. That's the thing we've noticed about the Lions over the last 5 or 6 games. Jets go back to Zach Wilson with Mike White being injured. If you missed that news as a Jets fan, don't watch now. I put it in the notes. It's a drop in offensive efficiency. There's no way he's throwing 40 times. I mean, he should. This is an offense that's capable of doing that, even without Corey Davis. And now you're against the team that you should be throwing against. So this should be 40 passes, but I'm not expecting it at all. I'm expecting this to be just same old Zach Wilson throwing it 20 to 25 times, completing 14 of them, throwing 2 interceptions, and the Jets lose by 18.
Yeah. You gotta hope that Wilson, I mean, Wilson is Wilson. In 2 weeks, did he really learn or change that much internally, mentally? Maybe he'll be a little more conservative, but I don't know. It's unfortunate because Elijah Moore has really started to come into his own, and honestly was somebody I was considering for our Flyers, and now I'm hesitant, with
Yep.
Wilson, because
Yep.
when Wilson was in there, Elijah Moore was barely non-existent,
Right. And
barely, or
it's, well, no, you're right. That's a good. He was barely existent. I knew what you
yeah.
meant. Um, it's not a place that you want. In 2 games, like what, to a certain extent, a part of this problem is not entirely Zach Wilson. Like, yes, he's made bad throws, he made bad, and they're so worried about it. Maybe they're not calling passing plays or calling more conservative passing plays, which only brings the problems closer to the line of scrimmage in some way, shape, or form. Um, But there's a small part of this that the only way he learns anything is if you pulled him to the sidelines and in game 1 you said, you see how he's throwing it? It's because we're letting him. Like you know what I mean? Like it's true. You're not calling 40 passing plays for Zach Wilson. You should be in this game specifically. His arm should be throwing it as much as Mike White would have. And Flacco's the backup. Like this is a game where, and I'm staying away from Zach Wilson this week because this is a game where if they're not even close at halftime, he doesn't play the second half. This is
Yeah.
absolutely a game where Joe Flacco is going to come in. And here's the thing, they will put Flacco out there. They'll call 20 plays, passing plays in the second half. Flacco will complete 14 of them, and then the Jets are right back in it.
Mhm.
But if you're afraid of giving that to Zach Wilson, he is not going to grow. He's not going to grow. He can't grow off 20 to 25 in this offense. It didn't work. Like when you could bounce to Breece Hall the first 5 games, the first 3 were Flacco. The next 2 we had Zach Wilson, and the team didn't look bad because Zach Wilson was throwing 30 to 35 times a game, and you were running the ball consistently. You can still run the ball consistently, but stop giving him 14 pass plays. Stop it.
Yeah.
Give him more. You know what I mean? Like he needs to be more effective, and that's totally on Zach Wilson. We all know that. It's not like he's out there having a 70% completion percentage and hitting his targets and stride and stuff like that. But you're not giving him the opportunity, and you're going to have to give him the opportunity to fail. They didn't do it last year. It really doesn't look like they gave him the shot this year.
Right.
So are you selling him short on his capabilities, or because he has an arm? So I'm on the fence about whether Zach Wilson is entirely at fault. Obviously, I think he's majority at fault, but to a certain extent, you have to take responsibility for not giving him the opportunity either. My score for this, I'm going to take Detroit, and I'm going to go probably. I think that's more likely the game script that I just told you, where they're out of it at the beginning of the second half is I can see that being like out of all the game scripts, like 20% of the like a 20% chance.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different ways the game could go. I see that as being like the most likely, like 20%. So not to say that Flacco can't lead them back. If the over under is at 43.5, it will be cold. I'm going to take the over, and I think probably isn't going to be close. So I have Detroit 30, Jets 20. What say you? What say you?
I think I've put a little too much faith in the Giants defense, but I have
Giants?
Lions. I have sorry. Wait. No, Jets. Did I say Giants?
Yeah.
Oh,
You
okay.
absolutely, definitely said.
That's terrible.
I have Lions 18, Jets 22. And I think I'm gonna regret this,
close.
but that's where I'm at. I'm hoping they made some adjustments, or they will make some adjustments for Wilson.
Say
and
that score. Say that one more time. What was it again?
Lions 18, Jets 22.
Ooh.
And
So
to your point,
you're
like,
putting my Cowboys in the playoffs. That's what you're doing with that one.
yeah, right. And the Vikings.
Yeah.
To your point, like the Jets really should let Wilson throw the ball more. And it's a weird sort of catch-22. Do you want to develop the quarterback, or do you want to make the playoffs? And I'm sure that's exactly what they're thinking, out, like not telling him, but that's what the coaching staff is thinking. And who knows how they go about their game plan because of that.
So the end result here, and let's just dissect that for 10 seconds before I give you the start sit and we move on. Let's say they make the playoffs. Their highest chance at making the playoffs is probably 6th. They're either 6th or 7th, and they make the playoffs. Who are they playing? The Chiefs or the
Right.
49ers. They're going to get railroaded.
Yeah.
Absolutely railroaded. So, and it's because both of those teams, I mean, the Chiefs will outgun them by a mile. And, not the 49ers.
The Chiefs or the Bills, sorry.
Chiefs, well, no, Bills are 1. Bills have first round bye. Chiefs
right.
or
Right now it would be the Ravens.
right. That's a little bit more interesting of a game. We saw
Yeah.
that earlier this year. But still would be nice to see them get railroaded by the 49ers and Brock Purdy. But that's the wrong division. So if they end up playing the Chiefs if they're 7th, they play the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Disgusting. Gonna get freight trained. Start Garrett Wilson, start Elijah Moore. I don't know who number 3 is. It's gonna be interesting because there's no Corey Davis. Tyler Conklin's probably safe. I'm back to having reservations about DeAndre Swift after last week. I don't know. Jamal Williams isn't my favorite either. This defensive line for the Jets is pretty good.
Yeah.
Next game.
Oh, sorry, real quick. Actually, that brings up a good point. Yeah, Swift, it seems like maybe is still struggling through some sort of injury, and going back
We
to
say that every other week.
Yeah, exactly. And so going back to ETN, I think that's something that I was reading is part of the reason he's been not as involved over the past 4 weeks is there's a little something going on with recovering from an injury.
Okay, makes a little more sense. Last game, we got about 6.5 minutes before we get a break. Patriots 7-6. They are currently at 6th in the wild card race. At the Raiders 5-8. They are 3rd and somehow not out of the playoffs. This is game number 2 of host v host.
Round.
It cut off. I don't know why. Raiders 1.5 point favorites at home, over under 44.5. New England defense. I think that's where this game starts and ends. When they have good defense, the team seems to win. When they don't, they lose. The Ravens offense needs to be steady as well. The Raiders have lost 7 of their 8 games by a score or less, by 7 or less points. 7 of their 8. If they were just better by a touchdown in 7 games, they would have the same record as the Eagles. Scary. And yet they're not, because that's not how football works. Jacobs has a tougher matchup here. Josh Jacobs, one of many in our fantasy playoffs. New England only allows 11.8 fantasy points to running backs, and they've only allowed 4 total touchdowns, whether receiving or running this year, to running backs. So Waller is another one who's returning in this game. I would hamper expectations for both of them. Yeah, potentially, if he plays. If he doesn't and Foster Moreau starts again, I'm not a huge fan of that. Can the New England offense find its footing? Big question. Do they do it with Ramondre, with Damian, or without both?
Right.
They're both questionable. I don't know. Again, it's another one of those questions where how deep do you think this playoff run really goes? Because you put them out there questionable and they hurt themselves. Well, now you're out the rest of the season, and in you playoffs, you got no chance. Then you risk part of next season, depending on how bad the injury is. They need a win to stay in playoff contention, though, especially if the Dolphins come up firing, the Chargers come out winning, and there's like 3 other teams that are knocking on the door. One of them would be the Raiders if they were to win this game somehow. As for the Raiders, they blew the lead last Thursday to the Rams. Do you remember that nightmare? Yeah. Oh, how could we forget that?
That is a disgusting act.
Absolutely horrible. It keeps getting worse for this team. Just when you think they have like something going, they don't. And interesting. 2 good pass rushes. It's important to note. Max Crosby, he does good things for the Raiders. Similarly, over the last 5 games, Josh Uche. Yeah, he's very good, and I still can't pronounce his name. 10 sacks in the past 6 weeks and 5 in the last 2 games.
Yeah, I've liked what I've seen from him.
That'll do. Josh McDaniels will face his old team, Bill Belichick. I mean, they both probably know each other to a certain extent. So
Right.
The close score is a fair one. I like New England's defense in this, though. You see what Derek Carr has when he has problems, or what he doesn't have when he has problems. If the Patriots, like I said, if their defense plays well, their offense eventually finds a way. They get chugga-lugging slowly.
Yeah.
So someone put that on a T-shirt, chugga-lugging slowly, and then just put a Patriots logo, fantasy flyer, sell it. I'm gonna go. This is tough. I'm gonna go New England. 22, Raiders 20.
Well, hot damn.
If you say you have the same score, you can just absolutely.
No, I have Pats 25, Raiders 22.
So you're going over. I'm going under.
Yeah, and it's definitely a little bit of me hoping the best for the Pats, because I could easily see the Raiders winning this. The Pats, obviously, as we've said many times, struggle to score. They have one of the worst red zone scoring percentages, and we don't know what's up with the running game. But what we do know is that Belichick and some of the other coaches know McDaniel's offensive play calls to a degree, and I don't know if anybody knows the Patriots offensive play calls because it hasn't been great and they keep changing it.
Patricia is so
Yeah.
bad. Patriots have given up only 8 touchdowns all season to wide receivers, 151 receptions, 1,914 yards. It is 17 averages out to 17.3 fantasy points per game. So I would honestly, that makes me like if he plays Hunter Renfrow. If he doesn't, Mac Hollins more than Devontae Adams. I mean, you don't not play Devontae Adams. Just
Yeah.
like Waller and Jacobs control your expectations. They're gonna have to find ways to win, is what I can't just be copy paste. Anything else from this one for you?
No, I'm hoping for a good game.
Well, that's just absolutely juicy. This is gonna be our last break. We'll go into part 3, and then we'll finish up with our 5 fantasy flyers, and then we're gonna let y'all get out of here. So hit us one more time, Sir Taylor from the dojo.
See y'all on the other side.
And we are back. Part 3, episode 29. Pretty soon, at this rate, we're just gonna hit like episode 50, like so soon. Like it's gonna be kind of insane.
I know I was seeing number 29. I was like, damn, that's we got a decent amount.
We've missed 2 episodes somewhere in there too.
Yeah.
Next game, we're gonna talk about Titans 7-6, first in the AFC South at the Chargers 7-6, second in the AFC West. Chargers 3-point favorites at home, over under 46.5, and this is
flawless victory. Finish him.
the last of the host v host games. I think this is a really juicy matchup. I'll just say it. So we'll start off with that one. This is probably my most interesting game. Both of these teams have so much on the line. Like, regardless of what happens with Jacksonville, Tennessee is not looking. They don't look like a first place team.
No.
The Chargers are looking for wild card spot. Tennessee can't let Jacksonville get any closer. So much is at stake. I don't like it.
Yeah.
It sucks that this is going to be like is this a 4 o'clock game? I think it's a 4 o'clock game in LA. Would make sense. It's 1 o'clock game.
Yeah, 4:25.
So it's going to be one hell of a juicy Sunday afternoon. Justin Herbert got Mike Williams back, who went absolutely nuts, cuckoo, bananas in his first game back. He has all 3 weapons, so I like this Chargers team now. Like, really, that game really reinvigorated my love for the Chargers. And by the way, that love is non-existent still, but it reinvigorated it. Tennessee is 32nd in the league in second half scoring, less than 6 points per game this season. If you're curious, they are 8th in first half scoring. So it's a little bit, it's a tale of 2 halves. They do most of it before the break, and then teams figure them out, it seems, or they just stop scoring. They are allowing 3.7 touchdowns per game over the last 3, which is second most in the league. And this is now a team that reinvigorated. The Chargers can score. They should be able to score. Tennessee pass defense has been shaky. That's being nice. They're 32nd in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, giving up 26 point something per game. Tennessee rush defense has been very good all season. Second least amount of fantasy points allowed to running backs. The interesting part here, however, Eckler does not run as much as other running backs. He runs, but he's not carrying the ball 25 times. I think the most carries he's had this year has been like 14. It's not been amazing. Tennessee has allowed 3 running back receiving touchdowns this year, which is kind of where Eckler's, that's more of his nuts and bolts. This could be the running back central game between Eckler and the pass game. Obviously, you have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Yay. The other side of it is a man we cannot forget his name. It's Derrick Henry. And this Chargers team has been just as bad against running backs as Tennessee has been against wide receivers. So Derrick Henry has as good chance as anybody to take advantage of that. So when you're 6'4", 250 or something like that. Chargers allowing 129.5 yards per game rushing this year, 31st in the league. The only team that's worse is the Texans at 141 yards per game, only a few. But the Chargers are not good against the run, which, again, we're going back to last week. I don't understand why you don't, if you're Miami, McDaniel, run the ball.
Yeah.
Run the ball. Stop throwing it to Tyreek Hill. Stop it. It'll work better if you run the ball a while and then you throw it. Start Keenan Allen. Sit in this one. Like, there's not really a bad weakness for anybody. I would go back to the Robert Woods well of independent wide receiver play, or independable. But they've thrown the ball decently the last couple weeks. Their yards per pass attempt was actually 6th in the league last week. Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, well, see what happens when you throw the ball and you don't just make Derrick Henry carry the team on his back. And then you go into this game and it's like, you should probably let Derrick Henry carry the team on his back.
Yeah.
It's just, I want to take the Chargers in this because the Titans, again, that scoring differential for me makes a big difference. The Chargers look good. Justin Herbert throws for 350 yards like you and I change our clothes. And again, wide receivers is big. So if you have that flexibility with Austin Eckler, and you have wide receivers, 2 big body wide receivers in Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, hell, throw Josh Palmer in there.
Yeah.
I like the Chargers in this one. I'm gonna go Chargers. I did not come up with a score for this one, so I'm gonna come up with one off the top of my head. The over/under is 46.5, and their defense has been solid. Derwin James, I think, is coming back this week, or is he out still?
I will
did
check.
not take notes. I'll check first. Oh wow, I won't because
He
Google
is
autocorrected.
doubtful.
Doubtful. Yeah, literally says that. Once Google didn't autocorrect the last name from James to Jones, it worked really well. So if he's back, makes me like the at or the over a little bit more. So I'm gonna go Chargers. I'm gonna go Chargers 29, Titans 24. What say you, sir? That's not very
So I have Titans 16, Chargers 26. The Titans score is pretty low. And I guess that was my hesitation there, but the thinking was kind of the fact that they don't have a lot in the receiving part of the game. Like, their options are not great. Woods just hasn't been, what he was with the Rams for a handful of years. The tight ends are starting to get involved. They could do better than 16. They probably should do better than 16.
Wait, what do you have the score?
Titans 16, Chargers 26.
Okay, I wrote 19, so that's why I asked. So continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I just, apart from Henry, I don't see the Titans really doing great.
You don't like
offensively.
Chigoziem Okonkwo?
You know what? I do, but not enough.
Apparently you don't. I think that's a lie. Ugh, so disgusting. No, good takes. This is a game that I like. If I could get it locally in my TV stations, I'd probably watch it. but it won't happen that way because there's another 4 o'clock game. I'm sure that CBS will shove down my throat that I don't want to watch. Bengals. Next game we'll talk about Bengals 9-4, second in the AFC North. Wait, second, tied for first. Why did I write second? That's a lie. Tied for first in the AFC North. Buccaneers 6-7. They are somehow first in the NFC South, which is just, I don't even have an appropriate sound for that really. That's interesting. My phone just decided to restart in about 0.8 seconds. Anyway, Cincinnati has to keep the train rolling. This game is mainly here because the Bengals, again, just like the Ravens, they can't afford to lose. The Buccaneers, I want them to lose because it's going to be much more interesting. The strength of Cincinnati's past game was on display last week. They had a 54% completion percentage, which is not great. But they are third in overall completion percentage on the season with 68.3, and Burrow still threw for 250 yards. It was pretty good. Actually, it was 220, 224. I'm close because Jamar Chase had almost half of them. He had like 110 yards because T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd left the game. I remember things now. Either way, Burrow's been on point for the most. Again, getting it done. Despite not having all of his weapons, Hayden Hurst will be out again this week. That's his second week or third week in a row where he's out, and he's been a solid 4, 5, 6 reception per game guy. Tampa Bay is 10th, roughly 10th in fantasy points allowed to running backs and wide receivers, but they're much less restrictive to tight ends. I don't think I'm going to take a tight end from the Cincinnati Bengals. It doesn't really wet my whistle. But it is interesting to note out. Joe Mixon could be used a little bit more in the pass game. Samaje Perine could probably sneak in again for some extra tight end like usage. Tampa Bay barely holding on to the NFC South, which again, the problem that all year has been their O-line. It's just been very, very bad. They're 28th in points per game. Tampa Bay is 32nd, dead last in the league in rush play percentage, rushing touchdowns per game, and yards per rush. It's not good. Defense hasn't been as lethal as it was last year. They're 26th in opponents' interceptions thrown. They're not creating turnovers. They're merely lucky if they stop a drive. Tampa Bay is 6-7 for a reason, and it's kind of going to rear its ugly head here if they're not careful. So for a team that just got blown out by the 49ers, 35-7, Cincinnati in Tampa Bay having a 3.5 point over under. Give me Cincinnati by like a touchdown or more. Do not run from Mike Evans. It will not last forever. Chris Godwin, you have to start him. Out of the two running backs, Rashad White, I like him more. He's better on the ground. He's almost equally as involved in the pass game as Leonard Fournette. Cincinnati, start them all. If any of them are out, you can confidently add that percentage into Higgins and Chase. So
Yeah.
No sits for me in this one. So no easy sits anyway. Anything for you from this one?
Honestly, no. It feels relatively cut and dry.
Like significant, but not significant.
Right.
Which means that this will be like Tampa Bay with the upset in the fourth quarter or some stuff.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
every
Brady
time you
will
play
try
a
to
chicken.
do Brady things and may do Brady things, but him and Evans have just not been on the same page, and I think that's been a huge detriment to the team aside from the O-line.
Evans got his 1,000 yards and then was like, I'm out. Does he even have his 1,000
I was
yards?
gonna say I don't think he does. I would be surprised if he does.
Let's see. Mike Evans stats. Yes, stats. Well, it was loading and then it stopped. No, he has 805 yards.
Mm.
So he will, if he's not careful, he's still projected for over 1,000. It is important to note that. He's projected for 1,053. Last game we're going to talk about in depth. Giants 7-5-1, currently in the 7th wild card spot. Commanders 7-5-1, currently in the 6th wild card spot in the NFC. I almost didn't want to talk about this game because of the droopy noodle that it was last time. Washington 4.5 point favorites, over under at 40.5. First question I have is, will they tie? I think the answer will be no.
Yeah.
I'm confident that won't be the case. Both teams are kind of flailing, more so the Giants than the Commanders. The Commanders have kind of come on more so. Taylor Heineke's added a new layer to the offense. The rush game doesn't look so bad. There's the defensive seven is only going to get better when/if Chase Young decides to play. He's been like active for like 3 weeks now or something, and they hasn't seen the field for some reason. Why did you even activate him from the IR? Just should have
Yeah.
kept. It's just very bad. Giants are, like I said, they're unreliable. Daniel Jones and the play calling, they've fallen flat. They've run out of tools. They're predictable. Maybe they're not converting. We'll start some bad speech right now. This is how it's gonna go. They aren't converting at important times in games. Their defense is not stopping drives. They're just letting things kind of happen and hoping it works out in their favor. I don't know if the team is like silently shipped away the season. It's
Right.
another one of those where if you make the playoffs, how far are you going to go? Because you're going to play this one's actually the 49ers. So this one I'll be right when I say that. It's either going to be the 49ers or the Vikings or the right now Buccaneers, which might be their best shot, but they'd have to get up to fifth, which they're not going to catch the Cowboys. So what do you have? What do you got here?
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, this is one of those where they should just, tag team it and someone else take our spot. Let's go home. Giants are allowing 26 opponent first downs over the last 3 weeks, which is worst in the league. If you need me to tell you their defense isn't the same, that's it. It can be good. It ain't been healthy, but it has been bad. Those are the 3 things. Washington's only allowed 5.3 yards per pass attempt since week 10. We know how little Daniel Jones throws the ball compared to what he could if he had decent wide receivers who had. But the other part to this is that the Giants are not very good in yak. There's hardly any yards after catch. It's hit somebody, they go down. Hit somebody, they go down. All the way across. So if you're going to run those plays, people in stride, hitting receivers in stride might be an important way to get the offense moving. If you get just 50 yards in yak after a game, makes Daniel Jones look absolutely a lot better. You'll end up with 6 to 8 more touchdowns probably on the year. Yeah, maybe 4 to 6, but still more touchdowns. And it saves the run game. It's not the way it's worked out. I understand they're still kind of, even at this point, they're still kind of formulating plans to beat teams without the pieces that they should have. There's no Wandale. Kenny Galladay is a flat tire. My analogies will continue to get better throughout the playoffs. I'm literally going to start taking a list because I love these. I'm going to start Isaiah Hodgins. He's seen an uptick in usage. He's done very well, even on the field when he's not catching the ball. He's had some very good opportunities, very good ways to get some space created. Daniel Jones might not be able to throw the ball that far, but Isaiah Hodgins is open. Slayton has been on the downturn. He's a casual sit. I'm not huge on really sitting him because there's nobody at wide receiver. So
Yeah.
Also start Curtis Samuel, who has had iffy weeks going back to week 8 or 9. But I like Curtis Samuel in this one. Also, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson are very solid. If Washington gets out to a lead, they should just pound the ball on the ground, left and right. And that means both of them will have plenty of opportunity. So I'll take Commanders in this one. I'm going to 4.5 sounds about right.
Yeah. No, I also like the Commanders. Curtis Samuel was on my flyer list. The Giants, unfortunately, after making things work or finding ways to win, as we've said, are honestly probably just exhausted and they're running out of options. They're running out of people, like just personnel in general.
That can't be said any better or worse. It is what it is. Next, we're going to go into the express lane for the previews. These are games that, and I'll go over their position. Most of these games don't really matter. They're not really close. They're not fighting at the moment, for a playoff spot. It's about 6 or 7 games. Game 1, Colts 4-8-1 currently third in the AFC South at the Vikings, 10-3, first in the NFC North. Again, Vikings win here, clinches the NFC North. Minnesota, weaknesses, deep passes. Colts, weaknesses, basically balanced attacks. Like it's really like almost any offense, like really, that's kind of their weakness. It's kind of like saying like if you had a Pokemon, but its weaknesses were like electricity, water, fire, and ground attacks, like that. I like it's true. I like Pittman in this one. I like Pierce. Jonathan Taylor, perfectly fine. If the O line for Vikings holds up anything decent, this should be a rather, I won't say easy. Let's take that back. This should be a win for the Vikings. Let's say that. They're only 3.5-point favorites at home. Over under is 47.5. I don't have any good sits. I would like, I guess if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Thielen from Minnesota or Kylan Granson / Jelani Woods. Only two I got. Next game, Eagles 12-1. They've already clinched things. We don't have to talk about them more. They're playing the Bears 3-10, who are equally as lackluster and careless about this game because they've been eliminated. Philadelphia 9-point favorites in Chicago, over under 48.5. Chicago's weakness, as it's been all year, rush attack. The Eagles are going to get out to 2 touchdowns and just run the ball. Philadelphia really doesn't have any huge weaknesses. If they're going to be slowed down, you have to attack the quarterback. Offensive line has not been bad enough for that to be a consistent thing. Start Sanders, start AJ Brown. With no Chase Claypool, no Darnell Mooney, I have to think Dante Pettis and or Equinemius St. Brown will play a factor in this. So you're dart throwing either one. I'll take Equinemius. Again, the secondary for this Eagles team is nothing to slouch at. Sit Goddard if he plays. I'm not a huge fan of his return game. I put Claypool on this because he's out, so don't play him. And Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet, you could probably start. Somebody's going to have to catch the ball, but I'm not a huge fan of the entire Bears offense against the Eagles defense. They had all the tools against the Cowboys, and they got slaughtered, and they still put up 29 points. So without half those tools, you put up, 16, 18? Not a huge fan. Falcons, 5-8, third in the AFC. Nope, lies. Third in the NFC South. At the Saints, 4-9, fourth in the NFC South. New Orleans, 4-point favorites at home, 43.5-point over under. Atlanta's weakness is like a slightly better version of the Colts, and then it's kind of everything. But passing is kind of the big thing. Deep passes, outside passes, crossing routes, passing. New Orleans' weakness seems to be run attacks, and New Orleans has had a hard time getting things going. So the unknown aspect of this game is Desmond Ridder stepping in for Atlanta. Marcus Mariota was sent on vacation, had surgery, went to take his hamster to the vet. I don't know. He's not going to be around for the rest of the season. Troutman, my start is Troutman or Johnson, whoever. If Juwan Johnson's out, Troutman. If Troutman's in and Johnson's in, I'd start Johnson over Troutman. Seems to be more trustworthy, specifically in the red zone. Start Olave. I like Cordell Patterson in this, who also plays very well against New Orleans for some reason. I'm not a fan of London until I can see what Desmond Ridder can do. I don't expect Desmond Ridder to be amazing this week, but I think he will be very serviceable because this is probably a pretty good game to start off against. The Saints aren't exactly your stout defense like they were 4 years ago. Next game, Steelers 5-8, fourth in the AFC North. At the Panthers, 5-8, second in the NFC South. Carolina 3-point favorites at home, over under 37.5. Carolina's weaknesses seems to be RPO and play action. They seem to bite on it a little bit more. Everything else isn't really a given. They're straight standard pass plays, and the run game, they can stop it. They also can stop neither of those. So it's a wild card. You're basically shaking a giant magic 8-ball every time you play them. Pittsburgh weaknesses, as we know, defending the pass. They're 30th in the league versus wide receiver, giving up fantasy points. I am starting DJ Moore. I'm starting Laviska Shenault. I'm starting Pat Freiermuth. Carolina is not amazing versus tight ends. Sit Pickens, sit Darnold. I still am trying to trust the Pittsburgh defensive line to get to Sam Darnold, who has been okay, but he threw for 120 yards last week and a touchdown, which is like 9 fantasy points. So stop it. Next game, Chiefs 10-3, first in the AFC West at the Texans 111-1, who have been 9 million miles eliminated. Kansas City 14-point favorites in Houston, over under at 49.5. I'll read you exactly what I put in the show plan. Are we really going to talk about this game seriously and start who you normally would start and sit who you normally would sit?
Yeah.
Moving along. In all seriousness, like there isn't a single Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks are out. Other than DFS, I don't want any part of the Houston Texans. I want all of the Kansas City Chiefs. And it probably starts with Isaiah Pacheco, spoiler alert, because Texans, like I said about 15 minutes ago, they're last in the league versus the run, 141 yards a game. So next game, Cardinals 4-9, third in the NFC West at the Broncos, 3-10, who are eliminated after their loss last week. Denver 1.5-point favorites, over under 36.5. It's the backup versus the new QB. Or in other words, it's it was Russell Wilson for the backup. Now he's not. He's not playing. So he would have been the backup in that joke, and it's not going to work now. So Colt McCoy versus Brett Ripien. I would rather watch paint dry. Arizona's weaknesses, tight ends and run games. Denver's weaknesses is their offense, which doesn't get better with Brett Ripien starting, unfortunately. Start Jerry Jeudy if you have to, or Dulcich if you have to. The best bet is Murray. Mack is a huge dart throw, and I don't hate it. He's probably going to see 35 to 40% of snaps. If he's in the pass game, okay. Somebody's going to have to catch the ball. I would imagine if you're Arizona, you're targeting Jerry Jeudy and Dulcich, with them being the only two credible threats on this team now. Also start Hopkins because he catches literally everything, including the cold and the flu when you get it around him. Sit everyone else. Last game, Monday Night Football, Rams 4-9, fourth in the NFC West, at the Packers 5-8, third in the NFC North. Green Bay 7-point favorites at home, over under 39.5. This could be the coldest game for the Rams in 35 years. And Baker has to do this is Baker's second game with 0 credible wide receivers. No offense, Ben Skoranek and whoever else.
Tutu Atwell, Van Jefferson.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
Yeah, just stop it. Green Bay's weaknesses, mostly big play and midfield exposure. It's less so the second one over the last few weeks, but I'll still add it. Linebackers, crossfield. They can allow some running, but that's been kind of better since week 8. Rams' weaknesses, their offense as well. All of it. Start Watson, Christian Watson. Start Aaron Jones. If you have to start anyone from the Rams, it's Cam Akers, who's becoming a trustworthy running back option, specifically in the red zone. Again, famous last words. Sit Baker. I don't like Higbee. Higbee has not done anything since. How does Allen Robinson leave?
Right.
And Cooper Kupp is gone. I understand Matthew Stafford's not throwing the ball anymore, and then Tyler Higbee is literally just a body. Every time they say snap, he stands up, and that's it. That is, yeah. I'll take in any of those games. Packers, don't care about Cardinals, Broncos. I'll take Chiefs. I'm going to take the Steelers over Carolina. No, because there's no Kenny Pickett, so I'll lie. I take Carolina. Falcons over Saints, Eagles over Bears, Vikings over Colts. Those should be, when you look at those games, that's pretty much, if you have watched football at all this year, that should pretty much be the way things go. Yeah. That's all of the week 15. Any thoughts on any of those that I missed? Anything you want to add? Any nice little cherries on top before we give our 5 fantasy flyers?
Not really. DJ Moore, questionable. Something that I think affected him last game. So
It makes me like Laviska Shenault a lot more.
yeah, I mean he's also questionable, but I think he was much more likely to play. Yeah, I would agree with that. And then Aaron Jones. Last week, AJ Dillon kind of took over when he had some injury issues. He hasn't missed a game yet this season due to injury, which has been a thing in the past where he's missed like 1 or 2 games. He's questionable. Even if he does play, maybe they temper things a little bit. So yeah, other than that, I think you touched on all the points. These games are in the express lane for a reason.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
I don't know. I figured I'd just chime in with that.
I don't remember saying cootie queen, but maybe I did.
What the French toast?
Flashback to the Orbit commercial from 2009.
Yeah, right.
Last part of this show, F part 3, we're going to give you our 5 fantasy flyers. I would normally call these 5 names you could trust or 10 names you could trust, but I think this week we're going a little bit. I know I'm specifically going way out of left field, so
Yeah.
it's going to be a little interesting. This is not as juicy of a week as we probably would have liked. Also, at this point, flyers. I mean, we're basically most of the flyers at this point. There aren't really a lot of injuries we got to super worry about. So, quick note before we started this, we did allow a few of the quarterbacks with common sense knowledge to be included in our fantasy flyers. We've talked about it before, that we don't allow quarterbacks most of the time in this. Well, we're going to throw it in there because of what I just said, the fact that there aren't many flyers. Half the teams are eliminated. We're in the fantasy playoffs now. So you probably have a solid team and you're not going to need any of the quarterbacks as flyers anyway. So why not? But like Kirk Cousins isn't a flyer. Like he probably should have been rostered or he's expected to be rostered. But like Brett Ripien, Colt McCoy, other names that make you throw up in your mouth. I'll let you go first.
I was gonna let you go first.
Because I think you're going to. I'm just go. Just.
All right. Well, one question: did you pick a quarterback?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay. Then I will also do a quarterback because their floors are higher. I'm gonna go with Ritter as my first.
Me too.
I like the somewhat rushing he provides.
Smart.
And then
neutralize the field. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to say McKinnon, but then I feel like I shouldn't be able to say McKinnon. So I'm not going to say McKinnon.
Nope.
Yeah.
He's firmly out of flyer territory. For anyone who's curious, he should.
Yeah. Usually like pass catching running backs.
When Clyde Edwards-Helaire went
yes, exactly.
IR is when he stopped being
right. Yeah. Yeah. So I will say James Cook. Ooh. And then Amari Rodgers, Paris Campbell, and I still went with Elijah Moore. It's a good matchup. I just couldn't step away from it.
Oh dearie. Yeah, you definitely went more, I guess a little more mainstream. Amari Rodgers is a juicy one.
Yeah.
I picked him up for the absolute minimum in our league 4 weeks ago.
Nice.
And he's at they didn't do that for no reason. If he stays there in the off season, that's going to be so valuable next year, I think, which is scary. That's just scary. Not as good as picking up Brock Purdy though, which neither of us did, but it's still shout outs to E, my boy.
Yeah.
Good 5 fantasy flyers. Mine are way more flyery. Number 1, Isaiah Hodgins. I brought it up. I'm going to bank on a ceiling game there. Fingers crossed. Number 2, Equinemius St. Brown. You feel sick yet? Number 3, Marlon Mack.
I almost threw him in there.
Okay, so you don't feel sick yet? Because I do.
Well, yeah, it doesn't make me feel great.
No, 4 is Desmond Ritter, which Ritter will go in there. So we're actually going to play 4 fantasy flyers between us, but it's really 5 still. And I went with the other Jet. So I didn't go with Garrett Wilson. He's not a flyer. Corey Davis is out. Can you name him? Name that Jet.
Not Conklin?
Nope, not Conklin.
Oh,
Probably should have gone Conklin.
Yeah.
'Cause Zach Wilson doesn't know who to throw it to besides Tyler Conklin.
Did you go Mims?
I did.
Yeah.
Denzel Mims. He saw it when Corey Davis left the game last week. He saw his snap count spike to over 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So he is assuming that Braxton Berrios, who is a perfectly suitable option as well, just hasn't been with the team quite as long as Denzel Mims. I'm going to go with the snap count and fingers crossed in a team against a team that allows quarterbacks to throw against them. So Hodgins, Equinemius St. Brown, Marlon Mack, Denzel Mims. Man, you went with Amari Rogers, Paris Campbell, and Elijah Moore. Like, I'm gonna lose, but it's okay.
I can change it.
No. I just went super flyery because if you went them, I could have easily just changed them. I went second, and I didn't. I just think it's juicier. I don't know. Yeah, that's gonna wrap up episode 29 of the Fantasy Flyer. Good game of 4 downs and 5 fantasy flyers in there. Host v host. We'll be back on Wednesday night. And then next Friday is the Christmas show, which, as I told Taylor, I've already started working on because I do the editing and all those fun things. And I don't want to have to do it next Friday night. Makes sense, right? Planning ahead. Any last thoughts for this final week, for this week of football? We got a couple minutes here.
No, I think we touched on a lot of good stuff.
What a hot take.
Yeah. I think I liked our 4 downs, especially coming into the playoffs. We touched on it as we went through the games, but there's a lot of stuff up in the air. Something we mentioned in the pre-show that it's very improbable that this would happen, but the entire NFC East right now is in the playoff hunt. But as we talked about with the Commanders and the Giants, one of them has to fall out somehow.
Yeah, the only way that doesn't happen. So if the Jets win, and let's see, easier schedule the rest of the way out's the Commanders, right?
Yeah, it was close though.
Would have to lose, which I don't think is going to happen. And then the Giants would have to win probably next week. The Lions would have to lose again. The Seahawks will probably lose to the Chiefs. Packers would have to lose next week because I don't think they're going to lose this week because they're somehow in this fight. Like, there's so many different things. Like, if they're going to be in it, somebody else somewhere else is out. And I don't know where it's going to be exactly, but.
Yeah, the Commanders are weirdly. It's like the Commanders and the Giants have flip-flopped. The Commanders are now weirdly in the same spot that the Giants were before, where they are finding ways to win.
They have receivers. They should have
Yeah,
been able
exactly.
to.
They have options, whereas the Giants don't.
Yeah, the Giants have a really good running back who they're not utilizing anymore for some reason.
Yeah.
He started off was really he's fallen off the bandwagon too, and I don't want to call season 1 for Brian Daboll a failure, but it's backing up into mediocre territory, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Even if, because let's put it this way: they have the tie. They're on pace to be 8-8-1. That's not amazing when you start off 7-1.
Right.
So, yeah, that's all the notes from episode 29. Friday will be Friday. This is
Today is Friday.
Yeah, it sure is. On Wednesday's show, we will review probably very similar to the way we previewed these. We'll go over the important games. If something amazing happens in one of the other ones, we'll talk a little more about it. But for the most part, these are probably the games that will matter come Wednesday as well. And we're going to go over more of the playoff scenario next Friday, Christmas show. I got to think of something fun to do on Friday because we can't just have just a regular Christmas show where it's a little bit more decorated and we're going to be wearing some crazy crap. So we'll think of something. I'll probably tell you on Wednesday. Well, tell the fans. Taylor, you'll know ahead of time. Because that's how working in the background works. Anyway, I'm Derek. This is what's your name again?
T-Plips.
All right, we're not
Swapping it up.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that anymore. Listen to Bob Barker. Have yourself
Bob Barker reminding you.
Watch some
help
football.
control the pet population.
Peace out, y'all.
Your pet spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.